Well, hello, everyone. We want to welcome you to the Empower and Equip podcast. I am your host, Brandon Watson. I am the Connect Pastor here at Montgomery, and the Empower and Equip podcast is a ministry of Montgomery, and we really want to give you tools and help empower you, obviously, and equip you to really strengthen your walk with Christ and each other. So we are excited today because our co-host today is the director of Thrive Ministry, the Thrive Ministry here at Montgomery. This is Tony Puckett, and I have to just say, one of the reasons we asked you is because you never know what's going to happen with Tony or what's going to come out of his mouth. 100%. And so I said, he's going to be informative and entertaining. But Tony, I'm glad to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here and happy to provide the entertainment and education simultaneously.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about you and your family.
Well, I do oversee Thrive here. I also am a life and relationship coach, and my wife is Dorothy. We've been married for 34 years. Y'all should really pray for her. And then I have two adopted children, 16 and 11. So I am not bored, even though I'm old.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. And we are very excited as our special guest today. We have two counselors, not related, that are here from Hope Road Counseling. You found that hilarious. But we have Julie Ford and we have Russ Montgomery. And so, Julie, I'm going to let you start. Tell us a little bit about you and your family.
Okay, so I am married. I've been married 19 years. I have two kids. I have a daughter, Anna, who's almost 14, and then I have a son, Connor, who is 7.
Okay.
So we stay pretty busy with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, how many years have you been at Hope Road?
So I've been at Hope Road about 3.5.
Okay.
I've been a counselor for 16 years.
16 years. Okay. Awesome. Russ Montgomery.
Yes, married, 26 years, got 3 daughters. I've been at Hope Road for all 5 years, ever since it started. And I've been a counselor for, I'm trying to do the math in my head super quick, 15, 16 years. Let's go with that. Sounds good. No one's going to really check.
Long time.
Now, if you watch the first 2 episodes, you notice that Russ's wife, Carrie, was our special co-host, and you have big shoes to fill.
That's what she said. She said she knocked it out of the park.
And so, it's going to be fun to do that. And married 26 years.
Yes.
You got married when I was 5. That's incredible.
Wow.
Okay, so just so you know, there might be some bantering between Astros and Rangers between Russ and I somewhere during this episode. Because I'm an Astros fan. He's a Rangers fan.
I've got a lot of baseball notes. A lot of baseball notes.
Yeah,
right here.
he really does. But we need to get back on topic. So we are going to talk today. We're having this emphasis on marriage. This is part of our home front for 2023, our real emphasis that we're putting on the home. And so our topic today is about conflict and resolution, right? Not conflict and resolution, yes, but conflict and communication. So we're going to dive into these. But before we do, I really wanted to pose the question to you guys about doing, marriage maintenance on your marriage. We do that on our homes, our automobiles, because we want those things to last. We want them to, really get the value out of those. But also why maintenance is important. And then I'll tag on top of that why counseling is important, because it's I think that there was a time that it was like a faux pas to think about doing counseling, but it's very important. And I want y'all to speak in a little bit on those things: marriage and counseling, marriage maintenance and counseling.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you said you have to maintain your marriage just like you do your house, your car, anything else. I mean, if you don't take care of it, it doesn't thrive, it doesn't grow.
Right.
So I think that's the maintenance aspect. And then why is counseling important? I mean, we can all benefit from counseling. Yeah. Sometimes it's nice to have a person that is not directly involved in your life, where it's not personal, just to be able to talk through some things and see things differently. So I think we could all benefit from counseling.
It's the most important relationship you have here on earth, and you need to do everything you can to maintain it, because if not, you're going to end up trying to repair it, and that's all, like with your car, if you don't do the things to maintain it, it's more costly later on. It's more difficult. Counseling's helpful because sometimes there are just things that are beyond your reach and your ability, and you need a professional to sit down just to give that other perspective and speak into that and maybe kind of hold you accountable on some stronger things.
Yeah, awesome.
Don't you think it's pretty powerful when they know you don't know them intimately, but you can speak into what's going on? One of the huge benefits of counseling is that third-party perspective that is not in the middle of it, but can speak truth into it.
Absolutely. You're removed from the emotions that kind of get in the way a lot of times of, especially conflict. A lot of the problems are just filled with emotion, and it's hard to kind of wade through, navigate those. A therapist can hopefully be a third party apart from that.
Yeah.
Let's jump into conflict resolution. Everybody deals with it. There's not a couple on the planet that doesn't have it.
Right.
How do you suggest a couple process, discuss, and resolve their differences when it comes to opposing views?
To actually talk about it. We think that sometimes, it's too hard, so we don't, and we just avoid it, and that's not helpful. So actually sitting down, maybe with another couple, maybe with a therapist, maybe it needs to be that involved. Maybe it's just something casual. Learn those skills, those basic skills to just talk to somebody. You know how to do it, just you need to do it with your spouse as well.
So that mountain that you've got in your living room with all the stuff that you've put under the rug is not getting that resolved.
No, and things like that. I mean, it may work in the moment where you ignore it or don't deal with it. That may pose a temporary fix, like, but that doesn't pose a long-term fix. I mean, you eventually have to talk about it.
Yeah.
And what if you don't want to?
Well, there is that. I mean,
well, you get what you get.
But is it? But in all sincerity, if you don't talk about it, is there any hope of it getting better, or is it probable that it's going to get worse?
It'll probably fester, actually.
Well, it's like a mountain, or let's just say a hill. You can hope you get up that hill, but until you put effort, purposeful effort, you're not going to get up that hill.
Yeah. Well, cool. Let's talk about this, really about, as a counselor, what are some of the repetitive issues really that you see regarding conflict resolution?
So some of the problems that Russ and I kind of talked about ahead of time that we see over and over, I feel like they can all be boiled down to about 6 different problems. The first one is immaturity, just being immature in your relationship, in your attitude. Avoidance, just avoiding the topic altogether, like you just said. I don't want to talk about it. Assumptions, making assumptions about what somebody means, what they say, what they do, their actions. Being prideful. Pride gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
Being inattentive to your spouse, ignoring them, that's a problem. And then being stubborn, like, I don't want to move. I don't want to do that. They need to do that. So those are kind of the main problems that I feel like we encounter mostly when we're dealing with couples.
Well, I would just say too that, on what you said, that pride gets in the way a lot of times in this conflict. And if you have to bring somebody else in, I've heard so many times where guys have said, and I'll speak for the guys, that they said, I don't really want to talk to anybody else about this at all, but they really don't even want to talk it, with their spouse about it. Right. And it's avoidance. It's sweeping it under the rug is what we would say. But we've kind of already hit on that it does take that effort to make those first kind of steps and stuff. So yeah, Russ, what were you going to say on that?
Well, I was just going to say, if you avoid it, it's like ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Like, we're just nothing there, nothing to deal with, but there really is. Right. And we find that a lot of times those things boil down to some common themes. Basically, it's identity. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want the other person to pay attention to me. It's financial. I mean, a lot of couples argue over their financial security, physical. It turns into problems with intimacy, with sex, and it's this idea that I want you, but I don't feel like you want me. And then for some couples, and this is seasonal, it can be about parenting. Those are the big themes that we find. You don't want to boil it all down to like everybody's going to fit neatly in these little piles, but those are the broad strokes on that.
Yeah.
And they definitely overlap. I mean, you can be in a season of parenting and financial. I mean, parenting is hard and parenting is costly, and those can overlap. So, yeah.
Kids are very expensive.
But long term, what do you think about this idea that conflict is just never going to get resolved? So I'm just going to suck it up and live with it, and it just kind of sits there and it sits there and it sits there. I think it grows. It's kind of like shadow puppets. It grows bigger and bigger and bigger. But in actuality, it really probably hasn't grown much at all. Yeah. Conversation could get it resolved, but you give it more power than it deserves.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a sad way. It's a sad way to live. It's a sad relationship to be in, if that's how you treat it.
Yeah.
I mean, marriage can be so much better.
Right. I mean, it's like that stagnant water that sits out there in the field, which I wish we had right now. But we, that water that just sits out there, after a while, it just sits and then it starts to smell. Mm-hmm. And then it's bad. It's growing stuff. And, again, I think just avoiding that causes more and more issues. And then, too, you bottle this stuff up. And then over time, the slightest little thing could pop the lid on it, right? Mm-hmm. And then it just all comes out. And then there's a bigger mess that at that point.
Yeah. Right. And the thing you're arguing about is not the thing you're arguing about.
Right.
Who didn't fill the ice cube trays? Is that really a thing anymore? I think I just dated myself with that reference.
Yeah, but it looks good on you. It looks really good on you.
Thank you.
So let's talk about some tools and strategies that you guys, offer people that, that they're stuck. I mean, that they obviously have come to you guys at Hope Road. They're sitting down and really probably at a level of frustration at that point. Mm-hmm.
They're on opposite sides of the couch.
Yeah, opposite. You see that.
They walk in.
And don't even like the fact that it is a couch.
Well, we thought we would try this out before, this is our last step.
Yeah.
So that's hard.
Well, two of the things that we encourage folks to do, and again, I know we're painting with broad strokes here, but situational awareness and self-awareness. What is going on around you, and even what is going on with your spouse? Do you even know? Are you paying attention? Do you have an understanding of that? And then what's going on inside of you? It's a heart issue more than it's anything.
Yeah.
We could help people with behavior modification, and like do this thing, do that thing, and that works for a while. But ultimately, it's a heart issue. So really asking those questions, what's going on with me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, acknowledging the idea that, hey, this might be a me problem. Mm-hmm. This could be more about me than it is about you, that I might be wrong here. And acknowledging that I might be wrong. Either I'm not being kind with my words, I'm not being kind with my actions, I'm not being respectful to my spouse, I'm not loving my spouse well.
Yeah.
Which those are all things that I can do differently. So I think that's important to recognize that hey, what I need to turn the mirror back to me, and what can I do different?
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah. When you get in a controlling nature,
mm-hmm.
You want to fix everyone else. Mm-hmm. And when really all you have is control over mm-hmm. you.
Right.
And, we see that over and over again. We see it in our own lives. Mm-hmm. When we realize that there's something that we need to fix. One of the things that I think that as we move into not only these tools and strategies for really helping work out these difficulties, but it all comes back really to communication. And that's why conflict and communication, we started with conflict. You know, and Tony and I were talking about this not long ago, that really a lot of these things in conflict could be thwarted if communication had been there in the beginning, right?
Well, yeah, because as we said, how do you resolve the conflict?
Yeah.
Well, you have to communicate. And if you don't communicate, then you don't have anything to be able to manipulate what is causing the conflict.
Right.
So, and you know, I like to tell my clients all the time, you didn't marry them because you didn't want to talk to them.
Yeah.
You didn't do that, you know. So at some point you knew how, and at some point you think you forgot.
Yeah.
But in reality, you haven't forgotten. You just need to go back to it.
Well, and I was going to say, even with communication, if you're not communicating, you may not know what the problem actually is.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to communicate to even know where the conflict lies and what it is.
Right. You know, and it's funny when you think about this in dating life. I always tell couples, you know, don't spend your dating life going to the movie. Because you're going there, sitting there, and you're not talking. You don't want to interrupt other people and be rude in the movie theater. But you go to this movie and you sit for 2 hours, sometimes 3 now, and then you go, and then, okay, it's time to go back home. Well, what'd you think about the movie? And it's about the movie, and it has nothing to do with the communication you have. And I think, speaking of communication, one of the things that we have to remember is that communication is always sender receiver, and it's just constantly bouncing back and forth. And a lot of times, and we were talking this in the first couple episodes, that, you know, we have to be careful that we're not spending more time thinking about what we want to say rather than listening to our spouse. And I think we've all been guilty of that, right? You know, when we're thinking about, oh, what should I say next? You know, when you're in maybe some of the heat of the conflict, but instead of really listening. So anyway, as we kind of get into that, we really want to talk about that. How do you breach the conversation with folks and you see a major communication issue with them? How do you breach that topic with them?
Just what we're doing here, we talk about it. If we're wanting them to talk about their conflict, they're coming to us for a reason. We don't just stare at them and magically make things better. We have to talk about it. Yeah. And so we try to model it, give them information, you know, steps, resources, things like that.
Yeah. What are some of the key phrases that maybe you hear and you go, oh, they're having some major communication issues?
Well, actually, you don't hear anything.
Well, that's true.
They just sit there and stare at each other. They go, you first. No, you first. It's like a really bad episode of Chip and Dale. No, I insist. No, I insist, you know.
Yeah, y'all have something to add to that?
Well, I think it's one of those like that, but he never or she always, and it's these.
Yeah, it's nobody taking responsibility for their part.
The problem is always external,
right?
And it's always hyperbolic. Like, it's always like this. It's never good. You know, like, okay, something's going on. No, you guys don't fully understand what's going on. You're not listening to the other person. Right. You don't have a good read on things.
Yeah.
Can I just dissuade a popular myth?
Yeah.
Mind reading doesn't exist.
What?
I know. You cannot read your spouse's mind, even if you are an incredible student of them. The only way you can really know what they're thinking is that they tell you.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to ask the question first.
You do. Yeah. But to assume that I know, or I know what's going on.
And that goes back to those problems from earlier.
Right.
Making assumptions.
Which is why listening is such a critical piece of excellent communication.
Well, that's one of the first parts.
Yeah.
Listening.
Yeah, listen more than you talk, right? So active listening, like you hit on a minute ago, Brandon, like, you're not thinking, how am I going to respond? You're half listening to them, but being intent on fully listening instead of thinking about what you're going to say, how you're going to address this, how you're going to maybe go against what they say.
Right.
But but really be intent on actually listening and reflecting back to make sure that you've heard it correctly, I think is really important in that.
Yeah.
You know, using phrases like, so I heard you say, and repeat back what they said. Because most people, I say most people, everybody wants to be heard. They want to know that their voice is heard. And if you're concentrating on how you respond to them, you've not addressed that, hey, I've actually heard you.
Right.
Well, and one of the verses I use is in James 1, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. So it doesn't mean you don't speak,
Right.
but the first thing you're doing is listening. So when you do speak, recognize that your words carry power, and your words carry weight. This is the most important relationship you have in the world. So you don't just speak flippantly to the person you love the most.
Right.
Yeah. Like the teacher used to say, hey, when your mouth is open, your ears are shut, you know, a lot of times.
Well, and the other great thing is that every other facet of your marriage will improve if you work on communication.
Yeah.
All ships rise on that tide.
Yeah.
That if you learn to communicate with each other, you know, if you got all kinds of problems, where do I start? Well, you start with learning how to communicate,
Right.
and everything will get better. It is impossible for it not to.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody wants to know that what they feel is valid, that meaning it's okay that I feel this way. So sharing with your spouse that, hey, I hear you. I hear this is how you feel,
Right.
and it's okay that you feel that way. It's amazing what just that alone will do, that you don't invalidate how they feel with your words. And that goes into what you said about your words have power.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do a hypothetical.
Okay.
Okay. Let's just say that there is a couple that is watching this podcast right now, and they are saying, you know, we are struggling with really communicating well. And they're thinking right now, I don't know the last time we even had a meaningful and deep conversation or talked about some of the things that we really need to talk about. And what's some things that you would just say, hey, I want to maybe just help you a little bit, give you a couple of tools just to maybe get that ball rolling?
One thing is to recognize not everything gets fixed with one conversation. This is an ongoing thing that you do. So start slow. Keep it slow. Keep it simple. And a lot of times it's like we want to turn every conversation into a mini counseling session. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Just talk. And if it needs to be about the weather or, you know, real shallow things, start there and add emotions. What was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? You know, what made you laugh today? What frustrated you? So you start connecting on emotions. But it's like we talk about, ask the question, then close your mouth and listen.
Yeah. I mean, ask the question and then want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
Because that is how you connect.
And you don't have to like what they say.
No, you don't.
just have to hear what they say.
That's right. And you don't have to agree with what they say.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the fun thing about marriage is that you're two different people.
Right.
Enjoy that. Don't fight about it. Enjoy it.
Well, that's cool. Well, I think this has been very informative. Obviously, we're talking about some things that are really prevalent in our marriages and in different times and different seasons. We all deal with conflict. And we have to work hard at communication. And I like what you said earlier, Russ, that, you know, really anything worth having is worth working for.
Absolutely.
And, you know, marriage is definitely something that we have to work at. But it's such a joy too. And I think that we can say, well, I work 40 hours a week. I don't want to come home and work too. But, you know, one piece of advice that has always stuck with me is a guy shared that every time that he comes home from work, he gets out of his car, he puts his hand on the door before he comes into the house, and he stops and he prays right there. And he says, Lord, please help me not to give my family my leftovers as I enter this door.
Yeah.
And it's just a mental switch to say, hey, my work's not done. My work with my family is just beginning.
And sometimes it might take a little bit more than just a moment at the doorknob. It might take all the windshield time you have coming from work to the house, and you're praying, listening to music, or not doing anything, purposefully disconnecting from that to go to the most important thing. I mean, why do you work? To provide for your family, the most important relationship you have.
Yeah.
And we're talking about work, but let's not forget it. It's fun work.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the person that you love.
Oh,
this is the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. It shouldn't be drudgery. It may start off that way if things aren't good.
Yeah.
But joy comes in the pursuit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can go and enjoy an Astros game together. That would be a lot of
Unless, of course, you're a Rangers fan, and then that's not going to work out so well for you.
Well, thank you guys for being a part of the podcast. Thank you, Tony, for
Thank you.
joining us.
It's a joy to be here.
Today. We wanted to just throw these things at you and just discuss this. Hopefully it's been helpful for you. If you know someone that you need to share this podcast with, we want to encourage you to do so. Don't forget, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and the Mobberly website, which is mobberly.org. And then I also want to just put in a plug for Hope Road, just a great counseling ministry here in the East Texas area, here based in Longview. We have some wonderful counselors. I've sat down with some members of my family have, and it's just been really a great thing. And so I just thank the Lord for the ministry that you guys have at Hope Road, and know that we have so many partner churches around the area too that work with Hope Road. So thank you guys for what you do.
Absolutely.
Tony, thank you for what you guys do in the Thrive ministry. I know Monday nights, Wednesdays, all week really.
Yeah.
It's just nonstop, but you guys do such a great job, and thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you,
as
Brandon.
well.
I appreciate that.
Thanks again for watching the Empower and Equip podcast, and we will see you next week.
Go Rangers.